Hey guys, it's Stan again with Eagle Mountain Solar, and today I wanted to talk about something that's important, with me being here in Fort Worth, Texas, and that is how our electrical grid works here in Texas and how that affects what you do when you get a solar system. But first, it's important to understand how the electrical grid works nationwide. And in a very Texan way, Texas is actually the only area that has its own separate electrical grid. So how the country is divided, there's an eastern grid, there's a western grid, and then Texas is just kind of on its own there, just because we like to be independent. So because of that, Texas is what's called a deregulated market. So meaning that the utility rates are controlled by the market, not monopolies of electric providers, that there's only one or two for the whole state, like there is in a lot of areas. So that way there's more competition in the market and the prices can be more competitive. So what makes it different is you have two different entities that you're dealing with when you set up your electric bill in your home. First, you have what's called a TDU, and those are the larger companies that you can't really control. These are companies like Encore and CenterPoint, just kind of depending on what region of Texas that you're in. And they're more of the larger companies that maintain the lines, maintain the electrical grid, and then you have what's called a retail electric provider, and that's the provider that buys that electricity from the TDU at wholesale and then resells it to you. So you as a customer, you're more working with these retail providers when you're choosing what your rate is for electricity. So you're typically signing a contract of somewhere from 1 to 3 years. And then you can pick and choose depending on your area. You can go on a site that's called Power to Choose, and you're able to sift through different retail providers and pick what rate you're looking for. And people do this usually every few years, and they can switch utility companies and get different promotional rates. Now, this makes it a very different market when you're installing a solar system, because in a lot of markets they have what's called net metering, where they buy back the energy at a retail rate when you overproduce. Texas doesn't have a statewide net metering requirement. So there are some retail providers that have a good buyback rate, so they usually call it a solar buyback program in Texas. So there are certain providers that have a higher buyback rate and certain that have no buyback and some that have kind of in the middle. So they buy back your energy at less than what the retail value is. So important consideration when you're installing a solar system is also seeing what electric providers you have available. If the only ones you have available don't have a very good buyback rate, it may be a better option to do a smaller size system or a lower offset, maybe 60-70%. So that way your overproduction isn't going to waste essentially. Another option is if you're in an area that, like Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, where there's a lot more providers to choose from, you can shop around and find a good electric provider that has a good buyback program and then switch to them either before or after you get the solar system installed and size it at 100% offset. So that way that energy is actually being bought back. Because what happens is during the day, you're overproducing what you need if you're at 100% offset. So you're essentially producing like twice what you need. And then you're selling that back to the grid and using that energy at nighttime. And then at the end of the month, if you produce what you consumed, then you're not owning anything to the electric company other than some basic fees sometimes. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach in Texas, depending on where you are. So whenever I work with someone, I have to see, okay, who is your electric company? And I have to research their solar buyback program, see if they have a decent program. If so, they can stay with that company. If it's not as good, maybe we consider a smaller system or even switching electric providers if there's not some big cancellation fee that they have to pay. The interconnection agreement is actually done with the TDU. For example, where I am, it's Encore. So that's where the interconnection agreement is done with, because that's who the lines are being maintained through, and that's where we're feeding back into. So even after installing the solar system, you can switch retail providers to one that has a better buyback program without having to do a whole new interconnection agreement. You simply have to speak with them or sift through their website and make sure you find their solar plan. So it's usually called like their solar buyback plan or something to do with solar. They should have something in the name so it's for people with solar panels, and then they should specify what their buyback rate is and what their actual charges are for you. So when you're looking at those, typically the ideal scenario, if the price isn't too high, is having that rate that they charge you be the same rate that they're buying the energy back from you. So that means you can build a system, size it at 100% offset, so you're producing all of your energy, and then you can theoretically get rid of most of your electric bill, except for, again, sometimes there are $10, $15 basic fees to stay connected to the grid. Or if you overproduce enough, maybe those extra credits can offset even that basic charge too. So like I mentioned, it's not a one-size-fits-all market here in Texas, so it is important to work with a consultant that knows what they're doing and understands this market. It's not the same as a market in Maryland or in California or in Minnesota. So every state's going to be different. So if you're interested in looking into solar in Texas, want to work with someone who is an expert in this local market, please reach out to us and click the link below to inquire, and we'll set up a time with one of our experienced consultants to be able to go over everything with you. As always, feel free to comment below with any follow-up questions to this or any comments. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.